Vision Quest. This one I'm really hyped about. Um, I feel like this is gonna, from the sounds of it, it should blow a lot of fans away. Um, so one of the big things with this one is if it canonizes some Marvel television projects. I've talked about this in my previous videos. So they're bringing back James Darcy, who previously played Edwin Jarvis in the Agent Carter TV series, and he had that cameo in Avengers Endgame. They're bringing him back to play the human version of the AI Jarvis, which I always thought was weird because obviously Paul Bettany played Jarvis originally, so and you already have him as Vision, so I feel like they're trying to canonize it somehow. And then, yeah, James Darcy also played Edwin Jarvis in the What If Agatha Went to Hollywood episode. And they even covered like Howard Stark owning a movie company, which is something they did in uh, Agent Carter season 2. So there's been a lot of Marvel Studios referencing that show, and yet, as of right now, it's not considered canon. So it just seems a little odd. And I'm thinking Vision Quest is how they're gonna finally just outright canonize it. Um, but then going beyond that, according to some scoopers, they're alleging that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. will also be canonized through this show. According to them, there's going to be some LMD use, and that's going to be the connection because I think they said something along the lines of there's going to be a connection to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but don't get too hyped. Um, so staying, because I really want all the TV shows to be considered canon. So, but being objective about it, the general use of LMDs obviously doesn't canonize um Agents of Shield because if you go back and watch everything, Tony claims to be an LMD when Coulson shows up at the Avengers Tower in the Avengers, and so that establishes that LMDs already existed on the Marvel Studios side of things before Marvel Television had them. So, just general, if they do have LMDs, it doesn't really directly connect to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But if they do come into play, it would be. I was thinking about this. One of the coolest ways they could do it, and I think would be beneficial, um, is if they have LMDs and then someone, I don't know who, like Ultron or Vision, mentions some of the history of LMDs, and they mention like Dr. Radcliffe having problems with his LMDs and the Darkhold. So that would be a direct reference to the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. events, but then it would also help tie into the Darkhold, which, as I've covered, Agatha all along finally acknowledged that there were multiple Darkholds in existence in the MCU. And, as of right now, on the Marvel Studios side of things, the MCU, we've really only seen Agatha's Darkhold. So, what was going on with the others? And that's why I feel like that would be an awesome connection because, like they even say, Vision Quest is the last installment of the WandaVision trilogy, which is WandaVision, Agatha All Along, and Vision Quest. So I feel like that connection is a really cool way to tie all that together. Um, but also, this leak kind of came out a while before they really got into revealing some of the plot. And once the showrunners, I think it was either Brad Winderbaum or one of the showrunners, they were talking about the plot, and because there were reports that we're supposed to be getting human versions of all these AI, and so I think that was maybe Scoopers trying to do the logical thing and say, well, this makes the most sense. The AI would show up in robot bodies. So if you don't know, LMDs are essentially almost supposed to be android body doubles for people. So they're supposed to look human, like exactly like humans, but then of course they're actually robots. Um, so yeah. Um, but the problem with the LMDs thing now is that it was revealed that Vision is supposed to be going around and downloading all these AI, um, intelligence into himself, and he's basically going to be interacting with them in his own mindscape. So we're gonna see, I don't know, just for example, like him in a house, and he's gonna be having all these people as roommates or something. Um, so yeah, like maybe he lives with Ultron, who looks a lot like James Spader now, stuff like that. So I feel like that kind of almost is a way around the LMD situation because they don't actually need bodies. But then who's to say like we don't get a twist towards the end and Ultron makes his escape out of Vision somehow and finds an LMD and now he's loose in the free world again. Um so yeah, the LMD thing I'm not too sure about right now. Um but yeah, it'd be nice if we had a specific reference. Um Now it was also talked about recently that Vision Quest is a story about grandfather, sons, and fathers, or something like that. And so obviously it's going to be a story about is it Tommy, that's Speed, who's the son of Vision. So Vision would be the father, but at the same time, Vision is a son of Ultron, and Ultron will be the grandfather. So then Vision's covering both the son and father role. Um, so that'll be kind of interesting to see those dynamics. Um, but talking about Ultron escaping, is that there was Scooper claiming like a long time ago, like years now, that Marvel would be setting up the three Forbidden Lands for Secret Wars. Um, and in the comics, the three Forbidden Lands are basically these territories where God Emperor Doom um, would place these three different like armies to live separately, because if any of them like were allowed free across Battle World, they would easily wipe out, most of the population, and if like two or more were loose, then yeah, the whole planet's gone. Um and so for Ultron, uh there was the territory known as Perfection, which is where all these Ultrons lived. And so that was the interesting thing to me after hearing that leak and having Ultron confirmed to return. Um, so close to Secret Wars, it was like, so maybe that leak might be true, that they're kind of bringing him back as a refresher for people who might have forgotten about him since, Age of Ultron. I think we were supposed to be getting him in Armor Wars. Like, it was going to be revealed that the Department of Damage Control was messing with some of the technology, and that was kind of set up in Homecoming, where you saw Damage Control had like Ultron Prime's head, and they were going to bring him back by the end of that. But obviously, the plans for that all fell through. Um, yeah, and then one of the other Forbidden Lands is the Deadlands, which is home to the Marvel Zombies, and obviously through What If and Marvel Zombies, we have them established. Not only that, in one of the episodes, I think it might have been episode 3 of Marvel Zombies, it was whatever episode they end up going to the raft. They actually referred to like the mainland as the Deadlands, so that territory was actually directly name dropped. Um, so that furthers that leak. And then something else that somewhat furthered that leak is that the third um, territory is supposed to be New Xandar. Now, Xandar was the planet where or most of the Guardians of the Galaxy met first. Then you had Thanos wiping it out, or half the population. Um, but then in Secret Wars, that is supposed to be home to Annihilus and the Annihilation Wave. And if you've been keeping up with some of the behind the scenes stuff of the MCU, we were actually supposed to have Annihilus as the villain of a Nova series, but that ended up being constantly pushed off and seemingly ultimately canceled or just pushed off to post Secret Wars. So that's the only problem with that now is we're probably not getting Annihilus in anything before Secret Wars, so not sure how that's gonna play out. Uh, but yeah, I think it's cool that we're gonna see human versions of like Dummy and You, the two robotic arms from Tony. See what they're like in human form. They're bringing back Edith in human form, Jocasta, who was just like an Easter egg in the Age of Ultron movie. Um, yeah, I'm not sure why they're not doing like Karen, who was Peter's AI in his suit, and then they also had a Easter egg in Age of Ultron for an AI chip that was named Tadashi, which was like a reference to Big Hero 6. So far we haven't heard anything about those two. Then surprisingly, Raza from the first Iron Man movie, he was like the head guy of that cell of the Ten Rings that was keeping Tony hostage. Um, he's apparently coming back, so I think that'll be interesting. I have no idea what kind of role he'd be playing in this. But yeah, it's kind of cool to bring back some of those minor characters to do something after all these years and make them even more meaningful. Um, we're also supposed to be getting, I forget the character's exact name, but she goes by coat of arms. Um, in the comics, she actually gets the item, the coat of arms, which allows her what, four extra arms, and she's kind of a villain. And she actually gets this coat that apparently has origins with I forget its name. It's some magical being. But I know there was going to be an Easter egg to that character back in Doctor Strange. If you look in the concept art, there's something called the Screaming Idol that was going to be in the Relic Room or the Hall of Relics. I forget what it was called, but um, yeah. So there might be some magic elements to this show. Let's see. And then that's been one of my questions too, because we haven't heard anything about it, is if Sword will return because they originally had, Vision's body and they made White Vision, and I forget the character's name, but the main Sword agent, um, the actor said that when he was when he got the role, he said he only wanted it if he wasn't killed off and he could come back. And so far, he hasn't come back. So I'm wondering if he'll come back in this because it just makes sense. Um, then Brad Winderbaum was talking about Terry Matalas, who's like the showrunner or producer on the show. And according to Winderbaum, Matalas is like an MCU historian, and apparently he's pulling a lot from the Infinity Saga for the show. Um, and he said he's like bringing it back in a way that's kind of fresh and not really, requiring homework and stuff. And that sounds really good to me. Um, and I think that's going to be good for the show and the fans to, obviously a lot of fans prefer the Infinity Saga over the Multiverse Saga. So all these references will probably make fans happy, but the fact that, they're considering him an MCU historian tells us that, you know, this isn't just something he was dropped into, it's something he knows, and he probably knows all the small details in the lore, just like the fans do. So it's, I don't know, I think it sounds really promising and it sounds like it's going to be really rewarding for us. Um, and then, yeah, this is apparently supposed to be the last time any major Avenger character ever gets a Disney Plus series. Um, yeah, I think they just I don't, it might be a budgetary thing for the shows, and as they kind of move towards, basically rebooting the Defenders, having the low budget ones be on TV and the high budgets be in the movies again, um, which, I have mixed feelings about because it's always cool to see a character get expansion like Vision, that might take a whole lot longer. And, it's like the Hulk where you have to cram it into other people's stuff if you're not getting a full movie. Um, but yeah,